Hi, give me a minute, please. I really need to check my camera before I go live. Thank you. This is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. Welcome to Shifting Perspectives. I am a philosopher, psychologist, sociologist of 30 years. If you are not familiar with my work, this is a journal entry for my research. This is mostly for me, but if you want to watch it and learn, great, fantastic. I have depression, and with my recent work from the 10th perspective, I was able to make some conclusions, and this just confirmed them, that depression is grieving the death or loss of a dream, something to do with the future, a dream, a hope, a goal of the future, a wish, a desire. It is also the belief that you cannot have your dream. It is often confused with death and loss of a loved one. And what that is actually disguising is that when we lose a loved one, we lose all the dreams that we had planned with that loved one. So we're not grieving the loss of the loved one. We are grieving the loss of the dreams in the future we were going to build with that loved one. Now, if you believe that you cannot have your ideal future, you can sink into a depression and stay there for over 30 years. Now, the resolution, acceptance, no. Naming. You need to name what it is you grieve. You need to accept that you have lost it, and you have to rebuild a new dream. And I can feel it. I don't want to. I let my emotions flow. This is an emotional study that I have been doing now since the 10th perspective. Let the emotions flow. Emotions are supposed to ebb and move and shift like ocean, and they don't. We are taught to control them. Trying to control an emotional wave or an emotional current is harder and more destructive than trying to keep water from the ocean on the sand. So in the 10th perspective, I decided to do what everybody says you shouldn't do, and I allowed all the emotions. I let all the emotions come in, no matter what emotions they were. I remained unprejudiced of all the emotions. There is a severe prejudice that we have toward emotions. Another one of those lovely things we're not talking about. Like anger, all the God words. I have a list of God words I composed. Arrogance, conceit, pride. I call those, among many others, I have a list, God words, and all of those we are prejudiced against those emotions. And everything we do is highly logical, highly logical. No matter how much I break down the human behavior, the human mind, the subconscious mind, everything, it is highly logical 100% of the time. This is the only accuracy I have found in all of my research. The human being is very logical. Now, this is an advantage for me because I'm a logician, which means that if something is logical, and it is, I can figure it out. And I did. So here's how it works. We are 100% based off of logic, which means, sorry, Spock, emotions are logical. Why do we have them? If they're illogical, why would we evolve with illogical things? If something is not logical or needed, it's unevolved in our system, like gills, like flippers, like webbed hands, like fur covering our body. Natural selection. Evolution systematically removes everything from our body, mind, and person that we no longer need today. So, why do we still have emotions? Why do we still have imagination? I thought this was very interesting. I also noticed that we are severely prejudiced and hateful against the entire right side of our brain. The right side of our brain is required and responsible for creativity, art, music, dance, laughter, and anything to do with creativity. And there is a massive prejudice against the right side of our brain. This is where I like to jokingly refer to my mythology and say, we're oneists. And if there isn't just one, it's not okay. You got to choose sides. So we, being oneists, chose the left side over the right side of the brain and have subconsciously attacked everything that is right-sided. That includes emotions, art, imagination, creativity. And this was all done in favor of the left, logic, science, math. There is some dispute on which side of the spectrum religion belongs on. Some say religion belongs on the left side of the brain. Some people say religion belongs on the right side of the brain. We can't figure that one out, so there's a lot of conflict over where that one falls. But everything else that's on the right side of the brain has been cut, removed, destroyed, abused, thrown away, taught in our society to suppressed. We live with one basic law. The right side of the brain is not allowed to exist. Period. So our schools are literally designed to completely destroy the right side of the brain. So this is the ultimate self-civil war that we have going on. We're all targeting the right side of our brain. Now, we hold more value for the left side of the brain. We hold no value for the right side of the brain. At this point, we should just get like a hemispectomy, you know? A hemispectomy is a surgery where you can remove half the brain. And yes, it's a real thing. And yes, you can do it. And yes, you can survive it. So we have a severe hate going on for the right side of the brain. There's like a war happening between artists and scientists. Now, many scientists will agree with our social construct, and many scientists are also artists because, like Einstein, like Thomas Jefferson, they saw the value in art. I'm the same way. I see the value in both sides. You need both sides. But our society is a little more stupid than that. So they believe that you have to choose between art and science. Everything's got to be a competition, especially when you're under 4 years old. So there's this massive competition going on because somebody's got to be a oneist. Who's going to be first? At the end of the day, we're just a bunch of children here. So our society basically declared an all-out war against the right side of our brain. And in the 10th perspective, I decided to embrace and allow every emotion that came up. I decided that the emotions were coming up for a reason, and instead of resisting the emotions, I accepted every one of them. So, yes, I did a lot of screaming. I did a lot of yelling. I did a lot of swearing in the 10th perspective. And I needed every emotion to play out. Now, there was this one particular day where I asked the question, why am I angry? I remember that day. It was the last day I was in the 10th perspective. And I realized that it was because I wasn't allowed to be smart. I wasn't allowed the science part of my brain. I was abused for touching the left side of the brain. So I went to the right side of the brain, overemphasized the right side of my brain. I went all arts. I was abused for that too. So I went back to the left side of my brain. I started off on the right side of my brain. I was there from the time I was an infant, right up until the time I was 12 years old. They finally abused me so much that I abandoned the right side of my brain and I went logic and science from the time I was 12 to the time I was 15. And then I noticed that Plato in the library of, or the University of Alexandria, mandated both. So at 15, to the rest of my life, I toggled both the left and the right side of my brain. And that's what I've been doing ever since. But I noticed that while I was toggling and balancing both sides of the brain, making sure that the right side got nourished just as much as the left side, society was doing something different. Society was destroying the right side of the brain while embellishing the left side. Our school structure changed in the 1980s, 1990s, and again in 2000 to 2010 with the intent to cut back on the art departments and to fluff the science departments. Sports. I don't know why. Sports were also added to the left side of the brain, probably for the competition. So we developed into a society where we completely allowed and celebrated competition while destroying empathy and emotions. We did this because we favored the left side of the brain, and we became prejudiced against the right side of the brain. Creativity, nonconformists. Simple. If you were an art lover, you became a nonconformist. Now, nerds are interesting. Nerds are one of the few people who got to enjoy their science without abuse. Oh, but you couldn't be that smart. You had to make sure that you weren't as smart or more smart than everybody else. And that's where nerds had a problem. Because nerds were in their hot speed. They were right where they needed to be to flourish. Artists were suppressed. Artists got abused. Nerds were too smart because they were in the area where they were allowed to be in, so they flourished, but the people who were forced to be there didn't do so well. Now, there's a lot of people who are artists who were forced to conform to science, and they did, to the left side of the brain, and they did. And as a result, it stunted their growth. Really? I think that's what it is. When you take an artist and you force them to be a scientist and they struggle, they're forced to be something that they're not. And then they beat up on the nerds who are flourishing at this thing that they can't figure out. It was all because somebody somewhere mandated what we should or shouldn't live like, what we should or shouldn't do. And it became the rule and the law of what we should and shouldn't prioritize. That's the problem. So after the 10th perspective, and I evolved to the 11th perspective, I noticed something else. This became very interesting. I noticed at the 11th perspective, I went highly logical. So I went highly emotional on the 10th, and I swung the opposite extreme into highly logical on the 11th. I thought, that's interesting. Now, my research at this point had already concluded that if you are experiencing one extreme over here, you're going to swing to the other extreme over here. We see this with the first perspective, and then we swing to the second perspective. In the first perspective, we have zero resources, and we are 100% dependent. We can't even speak. We are completely at the mercy of our emotions. And if we want to advance, we have one task: overcome the emotion to learn. That requires such an emotional discipline and the priority on logic at 1 year old. It's the only way a child can calm themselves down enough to finally observe, listen, and learn to say, please help me. Extraordinary. So, of course, as soon as you get access to these words, you go the extreme. You want all the resources, which is why the toddlers rip into our cupboards, take out all of our pans, collect things, move things, climb, because they just lived for an entire year without the ability to walk, without the ability to talk, without the ability to collect resources. So that's what your 2-year-old is doing. They are collecting resources. Resources are not objects. This is a problem. Resources is information, knowledge, data, experience. These are resources. So the 2-year-old goes on this massive learning binge because they just spent an entire year incapacitated, equivalent to someone in a wheelchair. So imagine your infant comes into the world a paraplegic, and they are. They can't walk, they can't talk, they see everybody else doing it, and they can't. So they're excluded. They're excluded, and they're a paraplegic. And they don't even have the ability to say, hey, can I be part of this joy? So after a year of that, they prioritize talking. Their priority shifts. They prioritize talking and resources. Now at 3 years old, because you've gone the extreme from here to here, now you need to integrate it. This is what we're talking about with integrating dependency with independency. That's why we call it the terrible twos. We do not go through the independent stage at stage 3. We go through it at stage 2. The purpose of stage 3 is integration of dependence and independence. That is the purpose of stage 3. You are supposed to learn how to integrate dependence with independence. Most people who don't graduate from stage 3, who get stuck in stage 3, are hyper independent. Or, no, stage 1 is dependent. So if you are hyper dependent, you're still in stage 1. If you are hyper independent, you're actually in stage 2. If you haven't learned how to integrate, you are stuck in stage 3, where you will need people. So, and this is with an aggressor, you will set it up so that basically there's 3 ways you could be. You can be a neutral, you can be an aggressor, or a passive person. If you're passive, it's because you did not learn the first ethic. If you're aggressive, it's because you did not learn the first ethic. And the difference is how you internalize or how you project. One is a hands-on and the other is an avoider. The other is, I need to take control of the situation by controlling people. The other person, the passive, is saying, I need to take control by controlling myself. So the passive person will take control of their environment, whereas a projector will take control of the people in the environment. There it is. That's the divide. A neutral person will learn how to balance dependence and independence properly and move on to the 4th stage. So if you are trying to control people, that probably puts you at 3rd perspective controller, and passive 3rd perspective controller toward the environment. Now, when you get to the 4th perspective, you have another extreme. You just lived an entire life without rules. On the 3-year-old, because of the dependence and independence in that stage, it's a time without rules for the 3-year-old. Now, parents might instill them, but the 3-year-old does not receive them, which is why the 3-year-old's favorite word is no, is because they have removed all rules and laws. That is part of their need to be hyper independent. So they've swung all the way over here with, no, I'm going to be hyper independent, until they learn how to integrate. Now, when they finally integrate, they value community. The other thing is, this is pure isolation from the time you are 1 to 3-year-old. So pure isolation goes over here. 4th perspective swings over here with a lot of community and laws and order, because they value, they appreciate it, but they've gone the extreme. When they go the extreme, that 5th perspective swings back down. Actually, the 5th perspective swings back over here, because you're going law, order, It's all about government, making sure the rules are all followed so everyone's fair. And then you swing all the way over here going, no, I can self-govern. I can do this on my own. And then you integrate at the sixth perspective. So I see this pattern a lot, 7th, 8th to ninth, and now 10th, 11th to 12th. So the question isn't, are we going from left to right to neutral? What are we really doing? What we're really doing, this is interesting, is what it is we're integrating, what it is we are learning how to balance. So the first 3 stages, we are learning how to balance the self. The next stages, 4, 5, and 6, we are learning how to integrate with others. And then 7, 8, and 9, we are learning how to communicate and integrate communication and learning with listening and talking. 10th, 11th, and 12th is emotions and logic, and learning how to integrate emotions with logic. That is what we're not doing. That is not at all what we are doing. So at the 10th perspective, you are highly emotional. But because you have the first 9 ethics in place, you value this massive emotion wave and you realize the value in it. And you think things like, this is vital to my growth. What are we missing? What are we denying ourselves when we don't experience all of these emotions? Let me just absorb them now and take them all in. So I allowed myself without prejudice to experience all the emotions of the 10th perspective. And then I valued logic again. And I took logic to the extreme. And I managed to control my emotions. And then at the 12th perspective, I learned that we were not supposed to control emotions. Because when you control emotions, you resist. To control something is actually resistance. So if I feel sad, I cry. If I feel depressed, I allow it. Whatever emotions come my way, I allow them to go through. Now, yesterday, I felt a surplus of emotion. I felt out of control with my emotions. So I sat down and I colored because that's what babies do. That's what infants do. And I tried coloring, but I had a duck, a bird thing to color. And I felt too suppressed. I felt like, oh, why do I have to color within the lines? What are the expectations? As soon as you give someone a line to draw in, I thought, what are the expectations? As soon as I saw the line, I associated that with expectations, much like a box. Much like a box. As soon as I saw that line, I remembered, be careful to draw in the lines. Stay in the line. And then when we're infants, when we're 3 and 4, adults love to put us in a line. I noticed this. It's the very first start of conformity. That these lines equal expectations. So I decided instead to do freeform coloring, where I just grabbed the crayons per the emotion and I scribbled. I started off with purple, and then I moved to red, and then I moved to green, and then yellow. I colored a lot in blue. Blue was before green. It was purple, red, blue, and then green, and then yellow, and then orange, and then red again. This got interesting because when I looked at the order colors in which I was coloring, when I was blue, I definitely felt sad. When I was green, I felt comfort. When I felt yellow, I felt warmth. Green was not comfort. Green was nurturing. Yellow felt comfort. Orange felt like intimacy, comfort. And then red felt solid and grounded. Back to earth. Red, I definitely felt anger. Purple, I felt too cerebral. That was my problem. I was overthinking. I was over cerebral. And I noticed when I looked at the colors I used to express the emotions I was feeling without words, that I was able to actually locate them in an emotional process as if it were a pathway. Now, when I looked at the stages of grief, anger, depression, no ability to nurture or comfort, no ability to nurture, no ability to nurture. We keep talking about self-care, self-comfort, but we're not talking about self-nurturing, are we? Not at all. Isn't that interesting? Here's the thing with emotions. It's a cocktail. It's a recipe. It's an emotional recipe. But there's more to it than that. You don't just go through all emotions. There is an order of operations. And that's what I discovered yesterday, was the order of operations of emotions. I went and saw my partner last night. It did not go well. My emotions were, I have not seen him in 5 months. And the emotions that I have had 5 months ago were completely different than where I am now. 5 months ago. And then 5 months ago, I was in the 6th perspective. Wow. 5 months ago, I was in the 6th perspective. Here I am now in the 12th perspective in 5 months. So yeah, I'm not the same person. The emotions were gone. I felt excited and eager, but not at all like they were. They were much calmer, more disciplined. I knew when I felt them, well, you are more emotionally disciplined. You're not going to feel the emotions like you did. And then when I got there, I was horribly uncomfortable. And the discomfort triggered more discomfort. I couldn't relax. I couldn't calm down. I was just constantly tense. I had one particular moment in the evening where I just needed to go. I had a realization that what I did have with him is lost. It's not going to come back because I'm not the same person. I told him that maybe he's just for broken, Anna, and I'm just not broken anymore. The rest of the evening was not enjoyable. He tried. He was enthusiastic to have me there, but I wasn't. I cried for the 2 hours home, and then I went to sleep. And then I laid in bed, and I'm just depressed because I'm grieving a dream. And I realized, again, there's the emotions again. I have to go through the emotional pathway. There's an order of operations. So this is my research right now. What is the emotional pathway? Sad. I have to nurture. How do you nurture? Nurturing. Growth. Learning. When you nurture something, you're helping it grow. That's what we're missing, guys, right there. Green. We're jumping right over to comfort without growing. Order of operations. We're supposed to learn at this stage. But we don't know how to learn because the Library of Alexandria was destroyed in the 4th century. They taught learning at the University of Alexandria. They taught learning, so we don't know how to learn. So anger is not allowed. Being sad is not allowed. Being nurturing was forgotten. And they jumped right into comfort, just comfort. Just comfort, just comfort. No. You need to be angry, and then you need to be sad to release. Sad was cleansing. It was the release. It was the letting go. That's what sad is. It's the letting go. Anger is the holding on. It's the resistance. It builds up momentum until you get to the breaking point where you finally snap and you finally accept and you release. Now, you can experience depression and grief through all of this. What you need is hope out of that nurturing emotion. But we're not nurturing, we're not growing, we're not learning, so there's no hope. We are taught to ignore our emotions and throw them all away. But there is an order of operations that we're supposed to go through. But these are all part of the right side of the brain, so it's thrown out. It's illogical, we are told. No, it's not. That is the illogical fallacy. That is the logical fallacy. That the left side of the brain is logical and the right side of the brain is illogical. No, it's not. Your entire brain is logical. Art is logical. Emotions are logical. And here's how it works. You start off with logic. And then, based off of your logic, the corresponding emotions result. But they can't result unless you have the logic as a foundation. Logic is the foundation. Thank you, Isaac Asimov. I knew you were getting there somewhere. I knew it. I knew it. I could feel it every time I was watching that show, like there is something bigger here. His show, I'm watching the show right now, Foundation, and it's logic. Logic is the foundation. It's the foundation to any society. So that when you have emotions, they are logically embedded in your foundation. They are the metrics, the compass of your logic. So that if your logic is off, your emotions are going to be off. So when you have emotions, it's a clue that you can go back to your logical system and say something is illogical. Now, the only time anything is illogical is when you're being abused. The only time you are illogical is when you are being abused. But we jump right away to communication because that's what we were taught. As an aversion to emotions, communication was used as a weapon against emotions. Communicate and avoid the emotions. No, you are missing the point. Emotions must come first. You use the logic and the emotions together to then describe, define, what it is that's going on, so you know, so you have awareness. And then you can name and define. So the part 1 is the logic, part 2 is the emotions, part 3 is the communication, part 4 is the naming. That's really important. Human beings cut out the emotions. So we removed part 2 from this process, and abuse compromised part 1. So this is what happened. Abuse compromised part 1. We jumped to part 4. I'm your friend, you can trust me. We then based our logic off of part 4, and that made us susceptible to part 3. And then we ended up having emotional mayhem because this was out of order. As I grew through the stages of growth, one of the things that I noticed that I was doing was reordering this. Logic first, then emotions, then name and defining, then understanding and communication, then giving someone a name. That was something that bothered me. I would meet somebody, this was 2 years ago, I would meet somebody and they would say, "Hi, I'm your friend." And my logic radar would go, "Friend? What's their action? What's their behavior? What's the emotional response? I don't have enough data for this person to be called a friend." Oh, but there they were calling me a friend. And I was going, well, this doesn't make logical sense. My logical radar was going off. Yes, please. Thank you. My son is bringing me coffee. Thank you. It's not safe for us to transfer it. There you go. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Dan. Be careful. So, yeah, that was it right there. It was the word friend that kept throwing me, because I would meet a stranger. Within 30 minutes, the stranger would call himself a friend. And my immediate thought was, where's the action and the behavior? That was part that I knew I was missing a part. It was part 3, part 4, and part 5. I missed part 3. Part 3 is action and behavior. So it goes logic, emotions, and then behavior, and then communication, and then naming and definition. This is something you are supposed to apply to your life, to you, to your partner, to everybody around you, to every social situation you are in. What is your logical foundation? What emotions are resulting from your logical foundation? Do you have these organized and under control? Because if you can't manage the emotions from your logical foundation, it means that you have abuse and your logic compromised. Because once your logic is a solid foundation, your emotions are very well behaved. Very well behaved. But the abuser instinctively knows that. So when they see you behaving illogically or emotionally, they attack your emotions, because your emotions are the clue in that they're abusing you. So your emotions just became your abuser's number one enemy, because they are the tell that something's up, which is why abusers attack the emotions. Now, if you have a lot of abusers in your life and they have a real big problem with your emotions, that should be the tip off that they're abusing you, because the emotions are the tattletale. That's what emotions are. They are the tattletale that someone's abusing you. So if someone's not abusing you, and here's the thing, so many of us are being abused that no one knows what it looks like now to not be abused. Hi, I am not being abused at all. This is what it looks like. I have a logical foundation. I feel fantastic. Even right now, when I'm having this emotional upset with my partner because my future, what I desired for a future is changing and I have to accept that, I still feel fine. I still feel fantastic. I am not off kilter. I'm still showing up. I'm still doing my recording thingy. So that's logical foundation. I know I'm going to sit down and rationalize all this, and we're going to talk it out like adults, and we're going to figure out the problem, and something will resolve. And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but logical foundation. Emotions are there. Allow the emotions. I'm giving them space. And I know now that there is an emotional pathway that my emotions have to go through. So here I am going, you know what? I'm going to record the emotional pathway and I'm going to allow people to see what the emotional pathway looks like. And that includes crying, screaming, getting angry, being upset. But because I'm consciously aware of this order of operation, I can systematically go through it and explain to you, this is what it looks like. Cerebral, logic. That's what that really is. It's your logic. And then anger, because there's contradiction. And that's the defense system waking up going, what's going on? Someone's tampering with the system. And then you identify and you are sad. Now, sadness is a cleanse. It's a release. So if you're not crying, you're not cleansing, and you're not releasing, you are resisting. Sadness is the release. It's the surrendering control. That's sad. Surrendering control. Now, if you have control issues, you are not going to let yourself get sad. You're going to stay in anger where you resist. So a lot of people stall out right here. And there's a lot of people just walking around angry all the time. There's a lot of people walking around refusing to ever be sad. They get more and more angry, more and more aggressive because they are resisting the control. You have to surrender control. That is sadness. After sadness, this is the emotion we are all missing, including psychologists. You have to nurture. You have to nurture. Now, I'll be first to tell you, I don't know what that looks like. I know that growing is part of it. If I'm going to be really honest with you, my gardening brain is turning on real hot and heavy with that particular emotional stage. I'm a gardener, first and foremost. Oh my God, am I. Now, before you get discouraged because you are a black thumb, I had 10 black thumbs once upon a time. Gardening is a skill. You have to be taught. It's not something you're born with. It is something you are taught. Everyone can learn plant care. And that's what I do. Oh my God, do I love it? It's why I called it the healing garden, because I'm a gardener. So I noticed that when I've got my plants, I'm nurturing my plants. And I notice when I have my children, you nurture your children. But when we talk about self-care, we never talk about nurturing ourselves. And that got me thinking, what exactly is nurturing? Well, gardener brain went right back on. Well, I know what nurturing is. It's making sure that they're watered. And it's making sure that there's sunlight. And it's making sure you breathe on them properly. For the carbon dioxide, which is proven to be factual. So it's giving them the emotional love, water, all the ingredients to grow. So how do you grow a human being? Well, that's easy for me because I attended Plato's University, where all we do is teach how to learn, grow, and teach. Well, plug that right in. Okay, so I do have all of the resources to resolve my problem with my partner. And that was really right there. That is what I was grieving, was my own inability to solve. Well, I do believe I just learned the first ethic. Self-nurturing. Self-nurturing. Not resilience. Nurturing. Wow, is this a big deal? Self-nurturing. You have to make yourself grow. to automate your growth. Oh, is this beautiful? Who put this thing together? Like, I want to shake the author's hand. This is gorgeous. By making yourself self-nurturing, you are putting yourself on an automatic system, which is why I crammed 6 perspectives in 5 months, is because I know how to do self-nurturing. I've been doing it since 1995. Wow. Self-nurturing. But you don't just do it. You have to know that you're doing it. It's the knowing that locks in these ethics. It's the awareness, the realization, and the acceptance. Oh, I can do this ethic. I am resourceful. Now, I know I don't believe that. I can feel it. I know I don't believe that. You have to believe it. Not just do it. You have to believe that you can do it. Self-nurturing. Now, I can comfort myself. Wow. Sometimes I think I have to go through these stages with my partner because they are the preliminary pathway for leading you. I finally am saying it. I feel like my partner and I am patient 0, research subject 0. And he in my relationship is relationship subject 0. And as I find solutions with him, I'm actually finding solutions for all of us. And then I go onto my podcast and I go, okay, here is this. And here's what I discovered. And then I apply it to my partner and it works. And then I pass it on to you guys and I say, here, this is what I tried. This is what I discovered with the self. Now I'm trying it on my partner and it worked. Try this. I saw him last night. It was the first time in 5 months he finally felt comfortable with me enough to do this. And it's like this, it's definite progress. And the big issue I had was I did not believe I could grow and move on from this. That's what I was grieving. That's why I was depressed. Not with him or the loss of anything. I really need to stick with this. I didn't think I could. See, and I've said this to him, depression is a loss of the self, a loss of belief. No way. Are we grieving belief in the self? We haven't lost the self. We've lost belief in the self. Which means if I believe in myself again, the depression goes away. Let's try it. All right. Logical argument. Dialectical behavioral therapy. Go through the logical argument. I said to him, I don't believe I can get through this. I don't believe I have the skills or the knowledge. Why, Anna? Why do you doubt your skills to get through this? Because I feel you feel sad. Why do you feel sad? Because I care. You do care. What are the other emotions? The other emotions are discomfort. I feel uncomfortable. What else do you feel? Tension, lack of knowledge, unknown. And he mentioned adventure last night. He did. And you felt happy about that. I did. So you care. You're sad because you do want. I do want. If you didn't want, you wouldn't be sad. Correct. There's a clue. If you're not sad, it's because you don't want. Sadness is because you do want. The question is, what do you want when you're sad? Because that's what you're grieving. So I do want. So we've established you do want to go forward. I do want to go forward. Yes. But you don't know how to handle the discomfort, the tension, the knowledge, and the unknown. I don't have a map. For the first time in my life, I don't have an emotional map. I can't predict. And for me, that's scary as fuck. And he said to me, "Are you physically in danger?" And I said, "You would never hurt me." He said, "Are you emotionally in danger?" And I said, "You would never hurt me." And he said, "Are you mentally in danger?" And I said, "You would never hurt me. I trust. This is why we have to trust." He said, "So if you're not in danger, count the resources. Go back and count the resources." That's right. Count the resources. Self-growth. Self-growth is what you are lacking. Self-growth. Self-problem solving. That's the first ethic. Dr. Graves was wrong. Oh, this is why I do not borrow from traditional therapy, is because the data is so wrong that I end up on a red herring or a wild goose chase. And then I find out that their data is wrong, and it's always wrong because it's not based on logic. And then I have to go back and find the proper logical argument, and it saves me so much time when I just do things logically, which is why I don't like traditional therapy, is because it wastes my time. Okay, now let's do this. Dr. Graves was wrong with the third and the first ethic. And he was also wrong on the idea that you can't learn them out of order. Sorry, Dr. Graves, you're wrong. You can learn them out of order. I'm saying it. Learn out of order. The problem is you're not going to learn the right ethic. It's going to change its meaning. It's like reading a Harry Potter book 4. Yes, you can read them out of order. You can start with Harry Potter book 4. But what's the experience going to be like instead of reading them 1 through 4? If you read them out of chronological order, that's all you're doing. Yes, you can learn these out of chronological order, and that's what's wrong with society. We are learning these ethics out of chronological order. That's it. That's all that's wrong with society. That's why you have mental illness. It's because you have learned these ethics out of chronological order, and you have removed the order of operations of emotional execution effectively. And there is a good chance that your left brain is declaring war on your right brain. That's what's wrong with us. There it is. Now, my next problem, my next complex was trying to figure out what the actual ethics were. Because when I looked through Dr. Graves' work, it was all over the place. Respect to him, but he didn't have logic, not like this. So I'm looking at it going, there's so many logical fallacies with these things. So I condensed them, I cut them up, I cleaned them down, and I started going through them and documenting myself, going, okay, but I noticed something. You are not going through just one perspective at a time. We are going through the stages of growth on layers. We have like 4 or 5 different stages of growth that we are all going through at the same time. Oh my God. That's why I say I'm 5, because right now, and this is because it's all coming together, I have the resources to solve any problem. I have the self-nurturing to resolve any problem. I know how. This is trust in the self. Come on, Anna. I know how to integrate my dependency with my independency. No, I don't. Not yet. I'm learning on that. I'm really struggling with that one. How to integrate dependence and independence. I'm learning that one. Rules are for yourself. All right. Here are the final conclusive perspectives. 1, self-nurturing, self-problem solving, and self-growth. If you don't know how to do that, You will not be on automatic. You will struggle for your entire life. The second ethic is your own ability of resourcefulness. It's being able to identify your resources. But resources are not physical things. It's your mind. It's your knowledge. It's what you know. The third is the integration of dependence with interdependence. I'm sorry. Is independence with dependence. It is literally learning how to become interdependent with a culture. This one's hard with society. You have to learn how to become interdependent with a society. And there I am, completely throwing out Wonderland. But they're illogical. I have to go back. I don't want to go back. And that's the problem. I have to learn interdependence. Fourth perspective, law and order of the self. And where we got this wrong is we project this onto other people. That's the problem. Our laws have no business touching anybody. If you make a law, it belongs on yourself. I did this on Facebook like 3 days ago. I wrote up all of these laws. And then I went, no, because I know that when you make a rule, it's a projection of your own control onto other people, which means these are my rules for me. So when you create a law or a rule, it's for yourself. You're not to project that onto other people. If you project it onto other people, yeah, that's a problem. For instance, I have a rule. I am not allowed to have World of Warcraft in my home because I have a problem. That is a rule for me. I am not allowed to play World of Warcraft because if I did that, the world would stop existing for me and I would just play World of Warcraft. So I'm not allowed. That's my rule. Now, I can't project that rule onto the children. I can't project that rule onto anybody else. It is my rule for me because I know I have a problem. So, self-government, that matters. Self-government. The fifth perspective is holding yourself accountable. And the sixth perspective is integration. Seventh perspective is when you start to begin learning. Learning begins. So the first six perspectives are just where you need to be to function as a human being. Seventh and up is advanced schooled learning. And yes, I know what subjects we need to be studying at ages 1 through 6 to get us to this point, and in which order they need to be studied. Order of operations matters. There's been this hodgepodge of just throwing everything together in a big pot and just stewing it all together. No. Order of operations. They must be chronological. And we did not know that it was chronological. Order of operations. So this is the order of operations of psychology, of human behavior, of our development, of our education, of our knowledge. So silence, learning to listen and observe. When you hit the 7th stage, it's like you're 1 year old again. When you hit 8, it's all about communication. When you hit 9, you integrate listening with talking. 10th, emotions. It's all about allowing all of the passing of all the emotions. Mastering the emotions, not mastering the control of the emotions. The opposite, mastering the release so the emotions come and they flow and they do whatever they do. And then 11th is logic. And then 12th is the integration. That's it. Those are the 12 stages of growth. Now, when you hit integration, you start to feel them go all over again. You go back to the first ethic and you relearn the first ethic through the 12 perspectives point of view. It's what I did with the Harry Potter books. I read the books 1 and then I read 2, but I didn't just read 2. I then went back and I read 1 and 2, and then I read book 3. But before book 3 came out, I read book 1 and 2, timed it so that I read book 3. And then after I read book 3, I went back and I read books 1, 2, and 3. And then the fourth perspective, the fourth book came out. And I reread books 1, 2, 3, and then I read book 4. And then I went back and I read books 1, 2, 3, and 4. I literally did this as a perspective study. And then I did book 5. This was very hard for me. I read book 5. But before I read book 5, timing it to the book 5's release, I read books 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I read book 5. Then I went back and I read books 1 through 5. Then book 6 came out. Same thing. Same thing. That is how I read the Harry Potter books. I did it as a perspective study to see how my perspective changed with each and every book. And that's what we're doing here. Thank you so much, JK. Thank you. Thank you. Between 9/11 and Harry Potter, this was brought to you by 9/11 and Harry Potter. Really, this is what this is. After 9/11, I had such a vast perspective shift that suddenly I had the Rorschach print perspective. Literally, I came up with that because of the perspective I went through with 9/11. So this is a direct result. The God Code was birthed literally from 9/11. Yeah, I would say that made it fucking worth it. That's why I'm here. And I forgot that. Because of the Rorschach print perspective. Okay, so here are the 12 perspectives. No, you don't have to learn them out of order. You can learn them out of order. That's the problem, is you're learning the fourth perspective or you're learning the fifth perspective without internalizing the first 3 perspectives. Oh my God. We have this massive emotional order of operations so that every time we go through conflict, we are supposed to be using our emotions in this order of operation emotional walkway from conflict to resolution. And I'm already there. So the Gring was the nurturing knowledge. Oh, you beautiful people, you. The fruit. I need the Bible. King James Version. Is it pretty? People have asked me that. Now the serpent was more subtle. That this is not the King. Okay, let's just go with it. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. Fruit. That is a metaphor. Fruit is a metaphor. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. I always believed that meant, lest ye become mortal. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then the eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. I don't believe good and evil means good and evil here. It means you'll be ethical. Eat of this fruit and you'll be ethical. Eat of this fruit and you will become ethical. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eye, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, wisdom is ethics. Philosophy means love of wisdom. Philosophy is the tree of wisdom, which is why we were banned from learning it. The Christian religion banned philosophy, and then they cut it out of the curriculum because it threatened them. There's a lot of Christian religions that preach to this day that philosophy is not to be discussed. It is because philosophy is the tree of knowledge. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then the eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. No, no questions. No, where'd you get this fruit, Eve? Do you think she slid it to him on purpose? Do you think she just made a salad and here's some fruit, honey? I don't want to be alone. And it's almost like she slipped him an immortality potion without him even knowing it. Like, because he did not question, because he trusted. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Naked. Shame. Prejudice. That is what that is. They became prejudice. That's illogical. Wisdom removes prejudice. You don't become wise and then become prejudiced. Quite the opposite happens. That is logical fallacy. That is highly illogical. You don't become wise and then become quite the opposite. The more educated you become, the closer you get to the polyamory and the kink lifestyles. The wiser you become, the further along in these stages you become, the more relaxed and the less control you have over your body, and the more you become a nudist and an exhibitionist by the time you get to the 6th and 7th perspective. Why would they close themselves? That is illogical. That's not human behavior. They are not acting like people. That is very interesting. Which means it's code, or it was altered. Something is not right here. This is illogical. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. This is not the version I grew up with, because cool of the day is bullshit. That is not there. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. They're hiding because they have shame. I want to say this is almost as if they came into the 5th perspective. That's what this sounds like. They came into the 5th perspective. They are behaving like they came into because they have shame. Oh, this is the 5th perspective. Actually, it's the 6th perspective. They have accountability. That is what they learned here. But then they start lying. So no, it's not accountability. All right, let's go through this. And the Lord God called unto Adam and said, Where are you? Where art thou? And he said, I heard thy voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. And he said, Who told thee you were naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldst not eat? And the man said, The woman whom thou gavest to me, she gave me the tree, and I did eat. And the Lord God said unto the woman, What is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly thou shalt go, and dust thou shalt eat the days of thy life. I always wanted to know why the serpent could talk. And while I put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. That's very vengeful. Yeah, there's a lot of punishing. Come on, Anna, logical deduction. Logical deduction. I read the Bible, and I thought it was very unusual that Genesis was so different than the rest of the books of the Bible. And if I didn't know better, I would say that the Genesis was written at a much later time period than the rest of the books, or a much earlier time period, much later. It did not read at all like it. You know what it read like? It read like Milton. I have read over 8 different versions of the Bible. One of them is King James. That's just my favorite because I like the prose. But the Genesis, the mythology, the words used, it does not come from the same source as Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Completely different book. Now, Exodus, Leviticus, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I was trying to put together Numbers and Deuteronomy into one. They read like they were ancient scrolls, but not Genesis. Genesis read like Homer. Genesis read like Greek mythology. Genesis read like Shakespeare. Genesis read like Tolkien, Silmarillion. It's one of the things I loved about Silmarillion. I felt like I was reading Homer in the Bible in one. I said that. Genesis is actually my favorite book of the Bible because of its prose, because it is so different than the rest. That is not the same God. I read the God in Exodus and Leviticus. I already did my psychoanalysis on God. Yes, I psychoanalyzed God. And that is not the same God. That is not the same person. Somebody has really sloppy writing in the Genesis. And it feels like they added it after the rest of the Bible. If I didn't know better, I would almost say that King James wrote his own edition, Nicaea, not James. The Council of Nicaea, which is why it sounds like Greek mythology. Come on, Anna, do the math. It sounds like a bunch of Romans and Greeks wrote Genesis. Well, when were they writing the Bible? Well, that would be around the 4th century during the Council of Nicaea. That makes so much sense. The Council of Nicaea, I hypothesize, wrote Genesis because there's a lot that contradicts all the rest of the Bible. It doesn't make sense. You know, now I know where the New Testament came from. So you have the New Testament, you have the Old Testament, and then you have Genesis. And Genesis just bugs the fuck out of me. Now, at the same time, it's my favorite book. It's beautiful. Job also bothered me, but Job makes sense now. Job and I we've settled our differences. Job makes sense to me. I get Job. Job, I love Job. Job is like, he's up there now. The New Testament, that makes a lot of sense to me. The Old Testament makes sense, but Genesis is a red flag, which is probably why it gets so much of my attention, is because it's an anomaly. So I detect logical fallacy with the book of Genesis. There it is. Sorry, guys. But yeah, Genesis is like a big red something's up. It doesn't fit. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't read the same. The characters are different. The wording is different. The pronouns are different. It's like the person who wrote Genesis was all about, let's have polygods. Yes, let's have a polytheistic religion. And they do. If you read it, the characterization, the behavior, the psychology of God is completely different. And it's a polygod, polytheistic religion in the Genesis. The rest, it's like in the Exodus, it's, we got to be monotheistic. So it's like in Genesis, it's polytheistic. I used to do this when I was 12. I remember all of my notes all over my bedroom. I had broken down the entire Bible in these logical arguments, and I had all the books of the Bible on my walls, and I had like Genesis with all of the logical fallacies, and I had Deuteronomy with all of the logical fallacies. And it was just like, do you remember Beautiful Mind when he was like mapping the whole room and he had like papers? That was my bedroom at 12. Over the Bible. I remember this. I've done this before. And then I started to notice that all the mythologies were identical. Oh my God, I love doing this. This is my childhood. I'm having a great nostalgia moment right now. I remember sitting here going, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Pandora's box. Let's take a look over here and the connections between Genesis and Pandora's box. But you know what else it reminds me of? It reminds me of Gilgamesh. Let's go over here into this area of history and pull out Gilgamesh. And oh my God, I loved it so much. So I started to draw all these myths, all of these stories. This is what got me into theology. So from 12 to 15, this is all I studied was myth. Oh my God, I was obsessed with it. I would go to school and they'd be like, this is the Egyptian god Osiris and Ra. And I'd be like, oh, that's going in my data on my chart at home. And I'd get home and I'd like draw it up and I'd be like little threads connecting, like, I see it. Oh my God, I loved this. Okay. So yeah, Genesis was logical fallacy for me. And I've already done this. So I'll just pull out my research from when I was 12 and I'll just line it all back up again because it's all coming back to it. Something is up with Genesis. It's been like a thorn in my side for so long. All right. So yeah. Oh my God. I'm so excited. I'm talking about how our left brain is absolutely contradicting our right brain and how we have this massive prejudice where there can only be one. And it's like we are on this massive competition to there can be only one. You know what we are in? We are in the Highlander. That's what we're all living. We are all the Highlander with swords. But it's not people we're taking out. It's competition, left and right, left brain over right brain. Which religion is right? There can only be one religion. There can only be one of everything. And that's why I say jokingly and seriously that we're oneists, is because we are so obsessed with competition that we're literally cutting out our own body parts, our mind, because God forbid the right brain exists. No, it can only be the left brain. Think about this. And I believe, yes, that it's absolutely our sport saturated culture. This is what happens when you have sports and no art. I really want to get a microphone just for that, so I can just drop mic. Like, I really want that just for emphasis, because that's it right there. This is what happens when you saturate a culture with sports and you don't balancing out with art. Instead, you compete them. And the artists are going, hey, I just want to express myself. And the sportists are going, you're such a loser. You're a weak. And then they throw names at the arts. And we're going, can't we all just get along? Like, the problem is they also took out our education. So there's a lot that's going on there education-wise that we're not tapping into. How do I unlock your mind? How do I wake you up? How do I get you to notice? Have you ever noticed? I believe that if I just give you 10 points to notice in our culture, just put a spotlight on them, you'll see it. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. That's how it started for me. 10 points. 10 points. I just need 10 points to prove to you the insanity of what you're really living in. If I can show you 10 cracks on the wall of our society, 10 cracks on the wall, if I just show you the illogic of the matrix you're in, you'll see it. And then you won't unsee it. And then you'll awaken. All right. This is the work I have to do. 10 cracks on the wall in the matrix. The goal is to make you see it, to make you think, to make you curious, to make you question, to turn on your brain, turn on your mind. That's what I want to do. Turn on your mind. Notice the anomalies. Notice the insanity. Notice the anomalies. I just need 10 points. Have you noticed how every time someone uses the statement, you are, you feel pretty lousy? Have you noticed how you say things like, that doesn't make sense? And then you become almost obsessed with trying to make logical sense of something. Have you noticed? Have you noticed how obsessed we are with controlling emotions? And yet, with how well we all control our emotions, we live in emotional chaos. Have you noticed? Why? Why do you think that is? Have you noticed that we're all fighting over one truth? We're all arguing over who gets to have the right truth. I think I know my path now. I do believe I have concluded the God Code. It was the emotional pathway I was missing. It was the nurturing. Because with that self-care, we are so obsessed with jumping right into comfort. Comfort you, comfort you, comfort you. No, not comfort. Nurture you. But you can't nurture. How could we miss the Mother Earth? How could we miss, of all of these emotional alignments, you realize it's green that we missed. Purple to red to blue. And then we jump right into comfort. If I were to break this down in sacral words for you, for chakra energy, cerebral, throat chakra, well, red, yeah, red is just, that was the anger. And then throat chakra. And then we jumped right over the heart chakra, the heart of the issue. And we went right to makeup sex. The orange and the yellow, solar plexus, and then sacral energy. Well, we were missing the heart chakra. We literally were taking out the heart chakra. Nurturing. We never self-nurture. All right. And I know how to nurture because I'm a gardener. I'm a mother of 3 children. I'm a philosopher. Those are the 3 cores. You do not get more nurturing than that. I'm doing my little triangle. Philosopher, mother, and gardener. And this is why I called it the healing garden. It's because of the nurturing. We don't know how to nurture. That is the missing piece of all of this. All right, I need some experiments. I need people to volunteer for research. I'm going to be doing a how to nurture class, self-nurturing. Oh, this is going to be different. I am going to be hosting a series of workshops and classes over the next 6 months. If you want to be participating in any of these, go ahead and click on my Linktree account below. There's going to be a Change Now. Just click on Change Now, sign up. And every time I host a class, you'll get a notification. These are free classes, free workshops. So anytime you want either a copy of the video or you want information about these videos or you want to participate in them, jump in, just click on the link below and click on Change Now. And it's going to be covering everything from case studies to All of this, all of the God code. It's everything that I have accumulated in one mass. So if that's something that interests you, please click on the link below. And thank you. May the kindest of words always find you.